Hello YouTube. Hello YouTube. Just thought I would share my 2013 Chevy Volt. I've had it a little over 2 years now, and I made a bunch of mods to it that I thought others might be interested. Firstly, I finally washed the car. It gets used so much I don't really wash it much. You can see I added 200 watts of flexible solar panels to the car. Right now it's charging, and you can see they go through what used to be the antenna penetration on the roof. I'll show more kind of how that's routed in a second. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the mod. It's been on there for almost a year now. I'll just show you the inside. I'm kind of impressed at how the interior's held up, given how old and how many miles it's had on it so far. Just start the car real quick. Right now it's saying that I have 36 miles of range. That's with just about 2 kilowatt hours, or 20% of the battery use. I've averaged about 75 miles per gallon since I've owned the car. This other trip meter's kind of maxed out, but yeah, it gets about 45, 50 miles of range, depending on how I drive it, what time of year. It doesn't really lose much range in the winter because of the generator. Overall, yeah, the interior's held up okay. Didn't really detail it or anything for this video. One of the things that's cool is I added this like retractable sunscreen. See me just fiddling with the camera. But basically you grab this little tab here and pull it across. You just hook it there on like this suction cup that I put there. And then it works better if you, it stays better if you put the sun visors down. But I think it's important to have a sunshade for like the electronics so it doesn't get too hot in the car, especially if you're always trying to get solar power, you know, it's gonna get hot in there. Good idea to like crack the windows and whatnot. This seat has seen a lot of use. I think it's held up okay. I added these Volt, like, what are they called? Kick guards or whatever. And then in here I added like a little 5-volt voltage step down regulator thing that goes up and powers my dash cam that I put in. It's one of those like cheap ones that doesn't have an app or anything. This thing's kind of fiddly to put back on, but basically I wanted like an adjustable voltage regulator so I could set it to like 5.5 volts because the wire goes all the way up here. Try to sneak it behind the curtain airbag so it doesn't kill me, and then it goes across the visor up there, and you can see it up there. You just take the card out and to view the data. Right now I'm kind of testing these Aero mod like wheel covers that I made. I think I'm gonna use a new template and kind of get them mounted on there better, but they're just acrylic cake dishes that are attached with steel cable ties. So this is the EVSC that I carry around in the car, and that goes to my auxiliary battery charger that I built. I basically snake it through the window and roll up the window and then charge the car. It's like a destination charger wherever you go. In the back, it came with this backup camera, but I don't know how to get it to work, just to be honest. And then back here is where that big auxiliary battery is. It's a quote-unquote 48 volt or 16S Life PO4 battery that I built with, I imported these like 280 amp hour format CATL cells, I believe they are. They're the cheap ones on AliExpress. They were like $30–40 each when I was importing them, which is crazy cheap. But basically the EVSC just goes to this also super cheap 240 volt single phase 6.2 kilowatt inverter, and then for the AC in and AC out, it's kind of weird down here. So AC out, it's going to the EVSC, and then AC in, I use this e-bike 48 amp. It's basically a trigger module for J1772. That way I can charge the pack through the inverter with just a J plug. Works out good if there's a free EV charger. I just have it bungeed down for now. So it doesn't like rattle around back there, bump around. And then on the side here, there's the switch that you use to activate it, so it's not always drawing power, always generating heat, right? So it's like a manual switch for now. So it says it can do 6.2 kilowatts, 240 volts, so that's basically level 2. The volt max is out at like 3.4 kilowatts in. So it can give the car full, it can max out the onboard charger of the car basically. And then it can charge the batteries at like 90 amps. What is that, like 5.5 kilowatts? And it does do pass-through charging, I figured that out. So you can charge the car and charge the batteries through one free EV charger, and it maxes out at like 7.5 kilowatts that way. Here's just some specs if anyone's interested. It's really hard to actually find these specs. It's the Pow Mr. 6.2 kilowatt inverter. And then this is the 16S battery bank. I made these little, these are 6S active balancer modules, the inductive variety. I just kind of got it like bungeed in there with the cargo net. And then it's removable through these beefy Anderson connectors, and that just goes in over here. So far the battery, you know, it stayed pretty well balanced. The cells haven't really gotten out of balance. I've used it almost every day for like the last year. What else can I tell you? But it's more than enough to charge the car completely to full, and then you can also like bottle up a free charge if you're at a free EV charger. And I just kind of hide it under this cargo net because, well, I guess battery prices have gone up a lot. But for the solar input, so they're two parallel, they're wired in parallel, two technically 12-watt solar panels, but the nominal voltage, it wants to be like around 16 or 18 volts or something, but it goes through the antenna penetration. Then I wired it down through the C-pillar, and then it goes down kind of through this compartment, and then it gets into the under tray, which I can't really show you, but I was able to replace I got rid of the AGM battery because it just got so heavy. I'm already adding a bunch of weight, and I added my own like 15.8 volts based LTO battery bank. I'll show a little bit more of that in a second. But yeah, the car really likes running on the higher voltage. You know, for almost 150,000 miles, I feel like this car's held up well, and it gets incredible gas mileage. Electricity is super cheap here, and most of my EV charging is basically free at work, especially since I can like bottle up free electricity and bring it home. I added these are really handy. These are like 100-watt USB-C adapter things. You can basically charge a laptop or anything from them. Pretty efficient. And yeah, the main USB-C output does go up to 100 watts, so that's good to like charge a laptop or power bank or power station. What else can I say? Got my meds back there, but as far as the specs, I'm trying to get it in focus here, but it does 5 amps at 20 volts. And then up here is my little radar detector, super cheap. Keep some like adapters for cables in there. Keep this Tesla to J-plug adapter, as well as a jump start kit in here, which I haven't had to use despite monkeying around with like the 12-volt system a bunch. It's mainly just to jump other people. I'm worried about, like, since the battery I put in there is so small. And then keeping the little Bluetooth dongles, which doesn't really work, but it's probably my end. It throws a bunch of CAN bus errors. I think it's the app I'm using, but yeah, the solar panels, basically they charge whenever the car's in sun, right? So the APM of the car, the auxiliary power module, a DC to DC converter, goes from high voltage to low voltage. That tries to get the battery up at like 13.5 to 14.5, but the car, you know, it thinks it has a lead acid battery, so it doesn't try to charge it beyond that. And then the LTO pack actually, you know, that's only like 40% state of charge, 14.5 volts. But I have a MPPT, like a 30 amp cheap charge module down under there that charges the LTO pack, and that's actually set up for a nominal like 15.8 volts. The Chevy Volt won't actually throw any low voltage codes until it gets to like 16.0 volts, so a little bit of overhead. I couldn't really tell through the viewfinder, but the solar panels are working. I guess when I'm not leaning on the solar panel, they put out like 4.5 amps each. So I think it's trying to target like 15.8 volts. So it's a total of like 9 amps at 15-ish volts. So almost 150 watts, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you wire it up to go straight into the low voltage system, right, and then you let the low voltage system have a lot more capacity, you avoid all the DC losses through the high voltage to low voltage DC converter, the auxiliary power module. Oh, here's a better shot. So when I'm not leaning on the solar panel, the one on the left's getting about 4.5 amps. So yeah, everyone seems to be obsessed with this idea of like charging the high voltage battery. One, that's not very safe, and then two, you still have a bunch of losses through the low voltage system. I did replace the halogen headlights with LEDs, color changing LEDs, just so I had like fog lights and better, brighter lights. This is just showing that it does work with the car off. Because, if you're trying to charge the high voltage battery, you gotta pay like the 500 watts or whatever it is, 200 watts to energize the high voltage contactors. So it's hard to really make headroom. And then as far as the actual like enclosure, so I started off with this 50 cal ammo can to fit the LTO pack, but that didn't really let me put the subfloor back into the hatch where the old lead acid battery used to be. So I found these Plano, they're like shot shell boxes. They're similar like dimensions, but they're shorter. And then that let me fit the actual LTO pack in there and then stuff the subfloor back in. And my auxiliary battery charger, the 150 pounds, really appreciates being back on solid ground, I think. This is a picture of me top balancing the LTO pack for like, I don't know, it was on my foot for like a month, just sitting in parallel. And then the old enclosures, the 50 cal can, is kind of like a picture of how I did it. I drilled the positive and negative holes, and then there's another 6S active balancer module in there. So no BMS. You don't want a BMS in an automotive application where you're like retrofitting. It's just going to cause a million problems. If you do get a BMS that's able to like do what it needs to do, it's going to cost more than the battery itself, because the low voltage system's fused at like 150 amps, and that there's like a desulfation mode that the battery goes into like twice a month, and it'll try to blast the battery with like 15.5 volts at high amperage, and it's just going to trip any like LFP BMS, and then so you need like 150 some amp capable BMS. You're looking at a pretty big setup. This is the old enclosure, same battery, the LTO pack, just kind of where I put it in the subfloor next to the APM. Kind of how I have it wired. I just added like accessory wire taps to it. Again, I didn't use this actual enclosure. I used the Plano shot shell box, but of course I didn't have any pictures of that. And then before I had I tried a little 32 amp hour. Oh, I should say these are 22 amp hour LTO cells. It was like $85 for the entire battery back before tariffs and stuff. And then you want to check all the internal resistance and make sure they're good. And then I had a small little LFP pack in there, 32 amp hour. That worked fine for almost a year. It made it through like 2 cold winters. I had a little, you can see a W1209 heating module with a 15 watt silicon heating pad that went in there with a temperature probe, and it worked fine. It's just I made the mistake of what did I do? I left the car running in auxiliary mode, where you don't press the gas pedal or the brake pedal when you start it up, and then I was charging like power stations with through the DC jack, or through the like a USB-C cable, and then it eventually killed the battery. And then when it came back to life, the APM freaked out because the battery was such low voltage, and then blasted these poor little LFP cells, which were probably a little bit cold at the time, and then they swelled up after that. But it made it okay through the winters until I did that. It's kind of a dumb thing to do. I didn't realize that in auxiliary mode the APM would not hold the charge of the low voltage system. This seems like a weird design choice, but even after it swelled up, it's pretty sketchy to have this in your car, I suppose. But I used it for another like 6 months like this. It worked fine, but just didn't really trust it. Going to like LTO, with the LTO you have it's like a 5 or 10 C nominal rate. They can take charge way better. They don't care about temperature really. I mean, they're good down to like Arctic temperatures, like -40 Celsius, which is the same as -40 Fahrenheit. So you don't need a heating module or anything. And they can handle high current a lot better. And then the voltage range is actually a little bit better for LTO, because whereas LFP, it overlaps so much with the car's auxiliary power module, the voltage range. But with LTO, you've got that like 50% state of charge overhead where, the APM will stop charging the low voltage battery, but then your solar panels will keep going for, it'll put another 200 or 300 watt hours into that battery. So it's a couple miles when you're sitting there. And then altogether it adds like 3 or 4 miles of range per day. But it all adds up, and yeah, so that's just kind of a review of my 2013 Chevy Volt. It's got like 140,000 miles on it. I feel like it's one of the best cars GM ever made, but kind of biased. We have a 2014. That one's had some problems, but I've been working on it and fixing it. But yeah, no battery degradation, even though the car has technically had almost 2,000 cycles, no, almost 3,000 cycles on the high voltage battery, which for LMO chemistry, 13 years old, that's pretty good. That's a lot more than they say you should be able to get out of the battery. And I just feel like it's down to the Chevy Volt's thermal design. They don't make EVs with as good of a thermal design anymore. They're all going to like bottom plate cooling. They're trying to put like phase change materials so they don't have to actively cool the battery. I mean, they keep cheaping out on how they actually cool the battery, and I think that's really important for longevity. Plus the state of charge restrictions, you only get, you lose like the top and bottom. You lose almost a quarter of the capacity in the Gen 1. The Gen 2 Volt had like slightly higher nominal capacity. It had a bit more range, but most of that range really came from lower state of charge protection on the battery pack. So especially after all these years in a used EV, like the battery pack starts to degrade a lot faster because you're charging it higher and discharging it lower each time. Plus, they went from a 3 parallel pack to a 2 parallel pack when they undersized the motors in the second gen. And they're trying to get away from the rare earth magnets, so they made the motors a lot more anemic in the Gen 2. Even though they perform the same because they're limited in software, but the battery pack didn't have to provide as much current in the Gen 2, so they're able to get away with a 2 parallel arrangement in the battery pack, and then they made the cells themselves a little bit bigger. That's really where the range comes from. So after 10 so years of more aggressive use, the battery packs in the Gen 2s don't hold up as well, and you get kind of similar range out of both the Gen 1 and Gen 2 now after all these years. So it's just something to keep in mind. A lot of people think that they made some magical improvements to the drivetrain in order to get better gas mileage. I mean, all they really did is they added a EGR valve thing, which just like, that's not good for longevity. It makes the engines kind of run a lot rougher. They kind of eat their own lunch after, you know. And then they also went to a aluminum block. They raised the compression in the Gen 2, and they went to direct injection, which also has some issues with longevity. So you tend to lose, even though the Gen 2 gets like 40 miles to the gallon, they don't age as well. You start to lose gas mileage or fuel economy in the Gen 2. Whereas the Gen 1, it's an iron block, port injected, low compression. It just holds up a lot better. I mean, there's some random things like there's a PCV valve diaphragm on the Gen 1 that goes out like on all 1.4 liter Ecotechs, but yeah, all in all, really satisfied with this. I guess it's a EREV. It's kind of a weird category of vehicle that they don't make anymore in the United States. But I have plans to basically add like I'm gonna expand the high voltage battery, so I might make a video in another 5 years or something and explain what the heck I did with that. So anyways, thanks for watching. Just know that if you look up stuff like, can I remove the AGM battery, there's a bunch of YouTube videos that tell you can't do it. All those people are wrong. I guess, I don't know, people like to talk about stuff that they don't know instead of actually try to figure it out. It's a lot easier. I mean, I could just go on, but I feel like everyone kind of has this idea, like, can I solar charge my EV? Can I extend the range? You know, can I get rid of the lead acid battery like Tesla did in their newer cars and go to a higher voltage? And people tell you can't, but if you read the service manual, you understand what's going on. You actually can. Those people are kind of retarded. So anyways, have a good day. Thanks for watching.